Your life, Hare, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. For us, it's almost evening, but for you all, morning. Today, we're going to see about the policy plan, the RDM policy plan, and normally, last times, the visitors already seen a little bit about this, I guess. But this is going to be a refreshment. If there are any questions during this presentation, please feel free to interrupt me anytime. I don't know if I need to introduce myself, but I'll do it shortly because I don't know if there maybe are some new people here. But I am the data steward at Hasselt University, Belgium, and I mainly give technical support in RDM tools and techniques. Last time we already introduced ourselves, so I don't think today it will be necessary, so I will skip this one. So maybe I'll show you first on our RDM webpage. We have the policy plan. To go there, just a second. We have, for the moment, also a renewed website. And when you go here to RDM at UHasselt, find out what's in it for you, then you can find our RDM policy plan over here. Our RDM policy plan is a 9-page document, as you can see. But I put it in the PowerPoint because that is easier to explain. But then you know where you can find it. I will maybe put the link of our policy plan in the Jitsi here. Just a second. And also, again, the new RDM website, if you're interested. I'll also put the link over there. This is the link to the new website. Okay, then we'll proceed with the PowerPoint again. So our policy plan. So RDM is essential for high quality and responsible research. And therefore, it's important to have a policy plan, and we try to achieve this high quality, responsible research by following the Code of Ethics in research in Belgium. We also follow a European Charter for Researchers, and we try to follow the national and international developments. By that, we established also a Commission on Scientific Integrity and an Integrity Charter. I'll first go through the theory today, but it would be nice to look with each institution also where you are in your RDM policy plan for the moment, the developments, and also the way I will explain it today is a little bit the Belgium situation and with European guidelines. But there's a lot that can be the same for other countries too. What does that mean, high quality research data? We mean by high quality research data, accurate data that is complete, authentic, and reliable. So that's what we described in the introduction of our policy plan. And the basic principles and guidelines are described in our policy plan. And it is to make the data secure, findable, accessible, and understandable. A little bit like the ground rules of RDM. And this for public sharing, reuse, and verification. What are we going to see today? I think, a lot, because there are around 12 points in the policy plan. The first thing I want to go over with you is the terminology we described. So in this terminology, we describe terms like, oh, what do we mean by research data? What do we mean by metadata? What is preservation, data minimization, and so on. The second thing we will describe is the scope. For who is this policy plan meant? Then we'll go over the basic principles. There we have 5 basic principles. And then we'll talk about the support that will be given by our institution regarding this research data management. The management of the research data itself, we put a little piece in there, and the regulation regarding the data management plan. Number 7, we'll talk about the relevant regulations, and there are a lot of relevant regulations. And then we'll talk about the security of personal and confidential data, storage preservation of research data, then intellectual property rights to inventions, the reuse of research data, and finally, what to do when a researcher leaves the institution, what are the guidelines there, and what are sanctions in case of non-compliance with our policy plan. Let's start with the terminology. There are a lot of terms in here, and I'll try to keep this briefly. But that are also things that I think a lot can be took over. So what is meant by a researcher? We mean every natural person that conduct a scholarly research or academic research. A student can be bachelor or master. And then you have the hierarchical responsible. That depends on the statute of somebody. For example, we have here researcher. Above that is the promotional investigator. Then you have the director of the research institute. Then the dean, the vice rector, and the rector. I don't know if these statutes are the same in Latin America. Maybe I can ask for some feedback here. So is this also the same by you, that you have researcher, then the PI, then the director of the institute, dean, vice-rector, and the rector? You can just use your microphone. Marek, do you have any idea?
Yeah, in Cuba is more or less the same.
Okay, Orelvis. Okay, thank you for your feedback. Okay. Then what we also explain is, okay, research data. What do we mean? We mean raw data, but also the published data. And more info about that will follow in one of the next courses about the DMP. Then we explain what all kind of data exists. Then high quality research data, I already mentioned, that's the data that is complete, accurate, authentic, and reliable. What do we mean by open data? That is the data that is free, can be freely used by anyone without requirements or contribution and share alike. Then metadata. Metadata is the data about the data. That is something that can be machine readable. And that is something I already explained in the last course session about tidy data. Then we have the record of processing activities. What do we mean by that? Is the logging of the processing activity. So well documenting which steps you're doing in the research. Then we come to terminologies of what do we mean. That's a potential patentable findings, and that can be used for commercial use purposes. Then storage. By storage, we mainly use mean the storage during the research. Preservation, and I'll come back to that later, but by our institution, we ask to preservate. After the project is done, we're talking about preservation, and we ask to keep data for at least 5 years. If we're talking about medical data, we ask 20 to 25 years. And it differs here also with the institutions. Is there already a rule in Latin America or at any of your institutions how long the data should be kept after a project? So you can put your answer in the chat. If it's no regulation yet, it's also fine, because I know there still needs to be RDM policy worked out, but maybe there is already a regulation. Or you can use your microphone. Don't be shy. Non-feedback yet. I don't know if Mark has an idea of this. Can you still hear me? For the moment, oh, yeah, okay. I'm getting reaction. I thought for a moment you were not hearing me anymore. Dianelis, you say, please repeat. So I was talking about these preservation. So storage, we mean the data that has been kept during your research project. Preservation means the data must be kept after the research for a certain amount of period. And by us at Hasselt University, we ask to keep it at least 5 years. And for medical data, we even ask 20 to 25 years. And my question to the group is if there, for the moment, is already a regulation about that. Are you already asking your researchers to keep your data for a certain period of time? So I think at the moment, yeah.
Okay, sorry,
It's
I
okay.
cannot hear. So I understand now the question. In Cuba,
Yeah.
researchers
Yeah.
say that the period that they want to preserve their own data is between 3 and 5 years.
Okay, and that's after the end of the research project?
After the end of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Dianelis, for the feedback.
You're welcome.
Okay. Somebody else who wants to say how it is at their institution? Okay, then we'll go on. Then there's a part of terms description of confidential research data. What do we mean by the confidential research data? That is if there is a third party agreement, and then that data needs to be treated confidentially. Then we have personal data and special categories in that personal data. So personal data is an identifiable person, and special categories are when they are sensitive by their nature. That can be gender, that can be political opinions, or biological info, medical info. That's all very sensitive data and special categories. Then we have data minimization. That's a term that we use when you're using personal data. It's very important that you don't use more data than you need. You can only ask for data that is specific for the goal of your research, and the rest should be deleted. Then we have the two terms of anonymous and pseudonymous. Anonymous means like it's not identifiable. You can't track the person anymore. If there was a person, they replaced it by numbers, and all the person names and identifiable info is deleted. Pseudonymous means that there is still a link. By the law here, you're obliged to put them separate. So if you have identifiable data, you need to have a list of your names, but they are replaced by numbers, and they should be kept separately. So that's about the terms. Are there for the moment any questions still about these terms? Something not clear about the terms? No. And then we go further. In the scope, we describe for who is this RDM policy plan. So it's actually for researchers at our institution, dus for that use research data in research projects, but it's also for the students of the institution. Then we have 5 basic principles. The first one is that we try to store, preserve, manage, and make everything as public as available. So the principle of open science, as open as possible, as closed as needed. The second one is institutional storage places and archived on advised repositories. So we have our advice on what they should use, and I'll come back to that later. But you should always take into account consideration of regulations of other parties, like the third-party agreements, that can overrule this rule. Then the policy plan, that's the third basic principle. It complements to existing legislations, like we have an acceptable use policy and identity and access management. So later on, I will give some legislations where that complements to this. And that are other documents. I looked through them. Some contain 10 pages, some contain 30 pages. And yeah, it's a lot of other legislation that's also important to this. Then the fourth basic rule is that specific personal data can only be collected for the research question. That is what I said about data minimization principle. And the fifth and an important rule, I think, is that each research project, the DMP is mandatory. I think that is a good thing. So yeah, that is really good that they do that and put that in here. Then this policy plan, to come back to the third, we have existing legislation, but you are all working on your RDM policy. So we should look at what is the situation in Latin America and which legislation is important to include in your RDM policy plan. Then explained here is the support by our institution. We as an institution commit to make people and researchers especially aware and facilitate them to use this policy plan. And therefore the Institute gives support, training, advice, guidelines, and templates. We also give DMP templates. And this all to manage their data better and to help them with the writing of a DMP. And as a support for writing the DMP, for example, we have into the DMP, that's the theoretical part, but we also have DMP writing sessions where researchers can come to us. It's more like an informal moment where they sit by us, write their DMP down, and we sit just by them. We can also work, and when they have a question, they can just ask at the spot at the moment if they still have some questions. And as support, researchers can mail us at our email address or can come to us for advice, technical advice, or on policy, funders, what are the regulations, but also technical advice. The guidelines by us are described on our website. Then management of the research data. So in this policy plan, we also make it very clear that the responsibility of this lays by each researcher, that he does optimal management of a high quality research data. Before I go further, I want to explain this a little bit because I'm going to refer to it in the next slides. Most of you already know the research data lifecycle, but for the ones who maybe forgot or are new to this, this cycle explains in which step that the research data will go. So first it's the planning phase, then you have the collect phase, then you have the processing of the data, the analyzing, the preserving phase, the sharing, and eventually reuse. Now, if we look at the guidelines about the DMP, they are based on the 5 basic principles that I explained before. And it's a description. This data management plan is actually a description of collecting, storing, reusing, accessing, archiving, and destroying of data during this research data lifecycle, what I showed you before. By us, it's mandatory. So 6 months after the approval, the researcher needs to send his first full DMP, how we call it, to the research office. Before they do their research, they have a short DMP version. That's to get their grant. But this one is the full DMP. And then it comes by us, and we at our institution look at every DMP and give advice on what can go better. So they are totally in order with their data management plan. But what is important is that it should be updated during the research data lifecycle. A lot of researchers think, okay, 6 months, I have my DMP and done. It goes into the closet or on the computer, never looked at. And at the end, Then we ask a final DMP, and then they need to do a lot of work to update it. So it's better to, in those years, they do the research project that they update that regularly. Then the funder, and that's by us, not all funders, but for the moment, there are some funders that are really asking for the DMP at a certain time. So that I was also curious about how this is in Latin America. Do you also have that data management plan is already mandatory? You can just write yes or no in the chat or open your speaker. So I'll wait a minute for hopefully some feedback. Till now I see no yes or no, but let's then talk about this further in the hands-on part. I'll go further. So that was what my question was. Then relevant regulations. A lot of text here, as it goes with regulations and legislations. And I put some in here. So when you in the beginning look at our data management plan, you see that this complements to existing legislations. And then you have all these documents with 30 pages, 10 pages that they supposed to read. So one of them is about the intellectual property rights. One is about ethics. One is about the GDPR. One is about the dual use. So when research can be used for military ends. The regulation about that. And then you have the Nagoya Protocol. That's about using the genetic resources. Then we have Information Security Policy Plan, the Acceptable Use Policy Plan, and then the agreements with third parties. So that's a lot. Now, in the meantime, I looked that there is some feedback on my last question. And Osvaldo said that the RDM plan is not mandatory, and Jean-Paul says it depends. Maybe you can write down, Jean-Paul, on what does it depend, or you may use the speaker if you feel comfortable with that. So you can use the chat or use the speaker. See what you prefer. And in the meantime, I'll go further. Okay. So here we need to look, of course, how is the situation by you? There's a lot of European guidelines here. And how is this in your countries? Then, if we look at the 8th point of the policy plan, that is about security, personal confidential data. There we describe that each researcher should take the responsibility to prevent access of unauthorized parties. And this is an important one, not only digital, but also physical. Sometimes we only think we need to protect the digital part, but in the lab, there is also important info, or maybe when somebody did transcripts on paper, that's also important data that should be protected by doing it, putting it somewhere safe. Preventing this access can be done in various ways, by access control, for example. and then you have single factor or multi-factor authentication. So you can do it only with a password, or you can say, oh no, it's not enough, we do it with a password and something we have, like by email, a password that you extra receive. So that's about the access control. By us, that goes by the Google Drive. So we give access control by the Google Drive. Then the de-identification, there we say as much as possible. I also give courses around this subject, and I know this is not so easy in research, because if you de-identificate too much, it is not usable anymore for your research. So it must be here a balance between usability and privacy. You can use anonymization for it or pseudonymization. I already explained the differences. Or you can use encryption. And encryption can be done on the data, or encryption can be done on the laptop itself. Then the third one is that you also need to be aware of non-disclosure agreements. If you have collaboration with other parties or firms, it's very important that you make sure that you have a good agreement about that, who can get access. And this normally should be written out by us. It's called Tech Transfer Office. They arrange everything when we're in a collaboration with a third party. So this, I don't know if you have a same office that does that. You may always write it in the chat how it's called by you, but it's the office who makes the contracts between the researcher and a firm or in the other institutions. Then policy plan about storage and preservation. So research data, raw and the process data, should be preserved, and again, physical as digital. But it's important to look that it is valuable for reuse. For these reasons, we need to preserve it good. For verification, for valorization or patent application, and for data collection. But it should be also kept if it's unique data that is not easy producible, or if it has a great value for the society or belongs to a publication. Then what is by us strongly discouraged? We don't like if people use USBs, and I hope that is the same thing by you, because USB stick can it can be broken very quickly or can be lost. We also discourage local hard disk. The reason why we ask not to preserve the data or store the data locally is if, for example, you do that and your laptop gets stolen and somebody takes the hard disks out and it's not encrypted, then they can just have access to your data. If it is encrypted, that's the other case, then it's more protected and it's not so easy to get to the data. But also, you have mostly not a backup when you do it on the local hard disk, when you store it on the local hard disk. And we have other solutions for that. Like we have institutional storage place. We use the Google for this. And external hard disks are also not advised, but we do understand if people use them. For our example, for the moment, we don't have enough storage space for all the researchers at our institution. And if there are people that are using a lot of data and high performance computing, then it's normal that they're looking for solutions and then they put it on external hard drives. But what we do ask, and we also put that in our RDM policy plan, is that they just don't buy it the cheapest one. They need to come to our IT department and look for advice that it's a good hard disk. But when they do that, then they're also responsible for the maintenance of it and the backup. We at our institution have a backup automatically by Google Drive, Google Shared Drive. Sharing is mandatory. It needs to be shared, the data, with the hierarchical responsible and team members if needed. And this is also, I think, a very important piece in the policy plan. And there should be checkups if it's really done. Because if a researcher leaves the institution and it's never shared, and he takes this data with him or her, then data can be lost, and that would be a pity. We, for the moment, also have a problem that we have My Drive and Share Drive. And on My Drive, as an institution, we don't have legal grounds to access it. So we say to all our researchers, put it on the shared drive and share it with the hierarchical responsible, because we don't have legal grounds to go to My Drive, or we should go to court to get the data. So I made an overview here how the situation is by us for storage and preservation. So like I mentioned before, storage and backup, that is what I mean during the research project. Preservation is the certain of period after the research project, and archiving is after this a certain period of preservation. Archiving is mostly if you don't need the data so much anymore, and there are then cheaper solutions. The only downside when you archive is that it will take much longer to get your data back. So it's nothing, it's not a good solution to go for an archive place if you're still processing data. For the storage and backup during, we advise to store the data on the institutional advised locations. What by us is the Google Shared Drive. So I explained just before, why not My Drive, Shared Drive. And if they are using external locations, then we described it's on the researcher's responsibility. So if they also have like collaboration, something should be written out by tech transfer office to make clear what the arrangements are there and that backups are in order. The duration here is for during the project. Then if we look at preservation, we have an institutional document server, and this goes for after the research project. We ask the researcher to put the publication on the document server, and then it's open for our institution for a certain period. And they put their publications there, or maybe an author version already, and they put metadata there about author, publication date, and the kind of license they want to put on it. And the second thing we have since a year or so, or maybe longer, is also a metadata repository about the data sets. So before it was only about publications. Now we also have around data sets that they can put metadata and a digital object identifier in there. So we can also easily now find the data sets. Then except for that, then we ask to preservate, just get the data off the Google Drive and preservate the data in a discipline-specific repository, because discipline-specific repositories use also discipline-specific metadata and can be easier found by peers. Then you have a general repository, and for example, that can be a Zenodo, for example, what can be used as a general repository. As a lot of these discipline-specific and general repositories are for free. This duration here, so like I mentioned before, UHasselt asks for 5 years. I heard from Dianelis 3 to 5 years is a little bit the same. I also heard at other institutions they sometimes have an other period of years, but for medical data, they mostly ask a lot of time that for the data to be kept. But the duration can also differ if there are other agreements or reasons to keep this data longer. Then we come by the archiving part. So after a certain period of preservation, then it goes to the institutional advised archiving locations, and as long as needed. For the moment, we are also looking for solutions for archiving. We know by us for the moment, and that's how the situation is now, not all researchers are so aware of this situation that they shouldn't keep always their data on the Google Drive, that they should preserve it, and that they should archive it. By the Google, there's a solution, Google Storage Buckets, and that's a solution for the archiving. But of course, we need to look in your institutions, what are their possible solutions, and also open source solutions maybe. So here again, what is the situation in your institutions? So maybe we can try to look at the different institutions, what the situation is, like storage and backup during the institution. What are you using of what are the researchers using for the moment for storage and backup? You can put it in a chat or use your speaker. I can maybe ask at Osvaldo first, Manuel. Can you hear me, Manuel? No reaction yet. Then maybe Georgina? Can you answer the question what the researchers are using for the moment at your institution? Are they using an institutional storage location? Or Elvis?
Yes, okay. Okay, I see the 3 different levels, and normally we don't have any differentiation for that, at least in my institution. Normally, maybe Osvaldo has more the idea what is implemented in the UCLB, but normally we keep the information without any differentiation between the 3 stages that we already mentioned.
Yeah. But I think in the beginning it's also normal. We are even working still on it. And even not all the researchers are aware, and we're still looking for
for sure.
solutions. Yeah. I see from the analysis, in Cuban institutions, the researchers storage their data on their own media, maybe on computer or others. So own media. Okay. Another institution who wants to complement to this? No. Okay, then I'll go further. We can talk about this later. We have a point in the policy plan that's intellectual property that belongs to the UHasselt. That's the rule by us. And only is exception by us if it's created by a student, and a student is a master or a bachelor. By us, the tech transfer office is responsible for protecting, so filling out a patent application, and for valorizing it, granting rights of the use to third parties. But what we need to say is that researchers by us, although they don't, that the intellectual property belongs to the UHasselt, they retain moral paternity rights. So if there is income, there should be compensation for that. Okay, I'm looking what Osvaldo on Grizzly wrote. Some in the cloud in UCL. And Grizzly, by the cloud, what do you mean by the cloud? Do you know which platforms they're using? Are they using Google or?
Yes, no, it's not a Google service. It's an on cloud platforms, an open platforms.
Yeah.
Administrated by the UCLV.
Yeah.
So it's the cloud service owner by UCLV is our service. In the last year, more researchers from UCLV are using this kind of service to save their data. That is a good start point. And less use the Google platform, Google Docs, and that kind of platform to store data. By a lot of people still use as the main option their own device, their own laptops, hard drives, device like that. But we observed that in the last year, more and the trend is that more researchers are moving to use the cloud service at the data center, at the UCLV data center, and that is a good news for us.
Yeah. Okay, Osvaldo. And is there already a certain amount of time they need to keep the data? Is there an agreement?
Sorry, Han, could you repeat?
For the certain period of keeping that data, is there an agreement how long they should keep that data?
No, there is no agreement or no rules about that. That is one of the things that we want to establish in our UCLV research data management policies.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And an important point, what I think in the policy as well in the trainings that will be given in your countries by the data stewards, because you have already also the RDM champions there who are going to do the trainings. I think awareness to the researchers and the risks that there are of using that own platform is very important for them to know. When it's too late, it's too late. I think it will not be the first researcher that will lose their data and a lot of years of work, and these things happen. So I think it's our task and our duty to create that awareness to all the researchers. Yeah. And then I see Andrea, very similar in Bolivia. Are you using also the cloud platform, Andrea? Are you using a cloud platform?
Todavía not are you using box?
The Dropbox or
Yes, similar.
similar? Yeah. And
But
is there
not yet for the next year?
Yeah. And is there an agreement how long that
No.
there? No.
No. I present the policy
Yeah.
plan and
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's go further. So we were here. This I already explained. Then one of the last points explained in the policy plan is the reuse of research data. So reuse by a third party, you have the situation where a researcher at your own institution wants to use the data. What we ask is that hierarchical responsible gives approval or denial to it, but first that he also goes into a conversation, what is the purpose for it, and will only give the access control that is needed, no more than needed. If it goes for third-party requests to the UHasselt or the UHasselt request to a third party, then it's again our tech transfer office who makes a written agreement. It's called UHasselt Delegation Act. What we also written out is what do we mean by public sharing? Research data is for us public sharing when it is in public accessible databases, in repositories. Is it presented maybe at a conference? Then it's also sharing, unless you're in a closed network with a confidentiality agreement. Is it shared on social media? Or maybe publicly exhibiting artworks. So that's what we understand by public sharing. And we need to be careful with GDPR rules, what we are allowed and what not. Then I come to a researcher leaving the institution. So we have a few guidelines about that and regulations. Research data collected and generated in the framework of the UHasselt University that needs to be preserved and needs to be made accessible for the hierarchical responsible, but that should have been already the case in the beginning, unless there were other contractual agreements. As we said before, IP rights inventions belongs to the institution with the exception of students, bachelor or master. For collaborations, again, it should be in a clear agreements, arrangement, what the rights will be, and that would be created by the tech transfer office. Then the last point is the sanctions in case of non-compliance. Each researcher is responsible for the compliance with this policy plan and the attachments. And the attachments are also, like I said, 30 pages, 10 pages. And by us, the DPO, that's the Data Protection Officer, is empowered to take internally measures if there's non-compliance, and especially when it goes over the personal data. So that's the part of the theory, and the meaning. What I wanted to do now is to go over to look what the situation is for each institution for each not DMP policy plan, each RDM policy plan for each institution. And if you want, we can create some breakout rooms, and then we go over these pieces, what can be be taken over, and what pieces are really Latin American context, and what is institutional difference. So for that, I first maybe want to take a break of 10-15 minutes, and then come back for this hands-on part. But then we also need to see who belongs to which institution and who wants to take part of this hands-on. So, Mark? I'm looking if Mark is still here. If you're talking, Mark, I can't hear you for the moment. Okay, let's take a 15 minutes break. And then I think it will be a valuable moment to work together to see how far each institution is with the RDM policy plan. And then I can come by each group and look and give advice around it. So we'll agree to see each other back at 5. Marek?
Yes.
You hear me? Did you hear what I said before, or did you miss it?
15 minutes break, and then I will. Do I have to record the hands-on?
For the hands-on, yeah.
But do I have to record it?
For me, not. I think this is the most valuable piece to record.
Okay.
So you can stop for me the recording.
And I end the
and I
recording.
see everybody else back at 5:15, and I need to go through with you, Mark, to see to which institution people belong to make breakout rooms.
Okay.
I think that will work the easiest, but maybe I'll call you on your phone. Is that okay?
Yes, that's better. Oh.
Okay. See you in a few minutes.
I stopped the recording.
Yeah, and we see everybody back at 5:15 to work together on the policy plan.
In this or in the other link? We can do it in this link.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
on the same this link.
That's okay to come back here. Okay.
Okay. See you.
See you.